Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 295. We are covering movies that are coming out the week of Friday, May 25th. No, Friday, the week of May 23rd, 2025. Movies include The Surrender, The New Boy, The Last Rodeo, and Any Day Now. Any Day Now is a digital release on May 20th. Eric Holmes will have the review of that. Also, Bruce Purkey over at the Cinem-Attic, he gives his thoughts on what I thought was the best film of last year. I don't know what Eric thinks about I think Eric Holmes reviewed The Brutalist several months ago. It was my favorite.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. It was my favorite film of the year from 2024. Tell us what you think of The Brutalist. And Bruce Purkey, in, I guess, some 20 or 30 minutes, when the attic is open for Bruce Purkey, he will give his thoughts on The Brutalist. Okay? So, Eric Holmes, how have you been the last week? What have you been up to, sir? Are you still basking in the a breed apart glory? Are you still fixated on sharks? So what's going on?
Yeah, it's still basking. I'm still hoping and praying for another breed apart or whatever the sequel to that's going to be. But yeah,
Dude, you've been cooking steaks. You love the movie so much. You should start cooking sharks. What do you think about that? Put some sharks on the grill. Can you do that?
I'll cook wild feral dogs.
Oh boy. So yeah, you've been good. You've been working a lot the last week.
Yeah, I had a real good show up in Victor for the karaoke, and yeah, state night's been going good. And hold on.
Oh no, you got to sneeze. Don't worry about it. Eric Holmes is trying to be very considerate about sneezing. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, it's just hanging there. It's gonna bug me for the rest of the time. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's been going pretty good. I haven't seen many movies this week.
That's okay. That's okay. You're not supposed to tell me the truth. You're supposed to tell me that I'm the chairman of the board here, Eric. You're supposed to tell me that you've actually seen a lot of movies, but you have them in the bank, but not this episode. How's that? Is that good?
There may be a Scott Adkins one coming out pretty soon that we can't talk about right now.
Okay. So you're not even lying. You've actually seen movies within the last week. You did possibly see that Scott Adkins movie, correct?
We can't talk about that right now, Greg.
Okay. But give yourself credit.
We can't talk about it right now.
You've been
talk about it. We can talk about it here in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be a great day.
See, here's Eric. He's saying that he hasn't seen a lot of movies, but he's seen movies. He just can't talk about it right now. Here's the good thing. Bruce Purkey.
See, this is a great idea for a podcast. Let's watch movies that we can't talk about and then talk about how we can't talk about the movies that we can't talk about.
Well, I have an idea. Let's call it Cinematics. But Bruce Purkey is, as always, okay, because Eric and I, we say we watch movies, but Eric's cooking steaks, Eric's living his life. He has 2 full-time kind of gigs. And me, what am I doing? I'm just probably watching the NBA playoffs right now. Bruce Purkey, he's doing some real yeoman's work with reviews of The Surrender, The New Boy. By the way, The New Boy, Eric Holmes has seen as well. And then, again, Bruce Purkey has a review of The Brutalist. Some really good stuff. But actually, in all fairness, we do have a lot of really good movies to cover this week, me and Eric Holmes. First off, Eric Holmes, The New Boy. Here's this film. It's from acclaimed director Warwick Thornton, and it centers on, it's in 1940s Australia, centered around this remote monastery for Aboriginal children, and it's run by, quote, a renegade nun, Sister Eileen. Here's a good thing. Sister Eileen is played by Cate Blanchett, A-list actress, okay? There's a new charge, played by Aswin Reed, is delivered in the dead of night, a boy who appears to have special powers. However, the boy's spiritual life does not mesh with the mission's Christianity, and his mysterious power becomes a threat. That Sister Eileen, again played by Cate Blanchett, is faced with a choice between the traditions of her faith and the truth that the boy embodies. So this spiritual struggle serves as the heart and soul of The New Boy. By the way, The New Boy was released back in 2023 internationally, or maybe different states, Australia, who knows, maybe in New Zealand, who knows where. It has 2023 as a release date. But for the purposes of the US, it hits theaters May 23rd, again, directed and written by Warwick Thornton. As of this recording, it has a Rotten Tomatoes rating of 74%. Eric Holmes, it sounds like a very interesting story. Does The New Boy pulled it off.
Sort of, I guess. First of all, it's got that opening title card of back in was 1940s Australia.
Sure.
They would take Aboriginal black children and try to. Oh, where did we hear about that before? There was another movie that did almost that exact same title card about basically
The
genocide
Mugai?
through eugenics. Yeah,
Yeah, the Mugai from a couple weeks
There
ago,
you
maybe
go.
last week. Yeah.
and then this one does that same thing, but then tells a completely different story. This is the second movie in a month that I've seen that brings up that title card. I'm like, oh, this seems interesting. Let's hear about this. And then nothing really. This one goes a little more into it than the Mugai does. A lot of the stuff that you mentioned, I thought was spoilers, but I guess not. Although this movie's pretty slow. So like most of the interesting stuff kind of happens in the back half anyway, which is most of the stuff that you mentioned. But since you mentioned it, I guess I can too, because I was struggling to figure out what to even talk about in this movie. The first half, they find that black kid, but he's got like blonde hair. Actually similar to Lose a Flower of Evil, where the guy grabs the kid that he think is a second coming of Christ. He's a Mexican kid with blonde hair, except this one's a black kid with blonde hair. Same kind of idea, I guess. But yeah, when he goes to sleep at night, he can conjure up like a little light thing from his hand. Looks like maybe a little tiny fairy or something like that. And it has like healing properties. The best part of this movie, and the only thing really worth talking about, is the stuff that happens at the very end. And he can't do that without doing spoilers. I will say that it pays off some stuff and even the stuff that it brings up in the opening titles about the genocide through eugenics. There's not exactly that, but there's like themes of something else going on. And I thought they were going to go a different direction. I was worried they were going to go that different direction. They went somewhere else. So I picked up a lot and got a lot from that ending. Unfortunately, everything leading up to the ending, there's not a whole lot there. It's like about an hour and a half without the end credits.
Kate Blanchett, does she do anything? Meaning, does she elevate the project because she's an A-list actress? Did that help with you're saying not much happens, but did having her help maybe or elevate it or not?
There's not much going on. So there's an hour and a half of movie, and most of this probably could have been condensed down into a half hour because they got to have, long shots of nothing happening. There's some interesting stuff happening here and there, but it's just not enough meat on the bone, I guess, until the end. And then, think of it a tomahawk steak. You got this long bone with nothing on it. And then right when you get to the end of that bone, bam, there's a steak right there. But, probably trim the rest of that bone off and just take the steak. I don't know why you would need that bone. But yeah, this is a real strange one. I do appreciate that it sort of addresses that opening title card of the Aboriginal, like the black people in Australia basically trying to be phased out, or what would you call it?
Eradicated, maybe? Yeah, phased out.
It's weird because the way they describe it, they're not like
assimilated into the culture, into the Christianity. Is that sort of the symbol?
I mean, yeah, assimilation is definitely part of it, and definitely has to do with the main kid and what happens to him. And then, but like the way they describe it, it's not like in Nazi Germany where they were murdering them. They're trying to breed them out.
Got it.
Not that makes it better. It's weirder actually, but again, this is the second movie that has brought that up in the opening title card. I wonder if that story's just been done to death and I haven't seen those movies before, but I'm really interested to see what that movie is and what that whole thing is about. And this is the second movie I've seen that they bring it up and don't address it too much, really. They bring it up and then use that as a jumping off point to tell a different story. So I wonder how many more of those movies are we going to see that has this exact same, in 1940s Australia, black people were bred out of Aboriginal children and this and that. And then the whole hour and a half is Superman and Batman punching each other. Okay, I don't know what this has to do with that opening title card, but that seems to be a new trend.
So that is The New Boy, again in theaters May 23rd, Friday, May 23rd, directed and written by Warwick Thornton. Eric Holmes, what is your rating for The New Boy?
I'll give it 3 stars just because I really enjoyed the ending, but that's like that that end is really all this movie has. It's like everything leading up to it almost makes the rest of the movie worth it. But this should have been a half-hour short. It would have been an excellent half-hour short.
Okay, so that is The New Boy, reviewed by Eric Holmes. Again, in moments, you will hear Bruce Purkey's take on The New Boy. Let's see, did Bruce Purkey give it 3 stars or maybe a little bit lower or higher? You'll find out in a few moments. Now, next up is a movie called The Last Rodeo. Eric Holmes, we have actors in The Last Rodeo. This is from Angel Studios. Neil McDonough, I'm sure if the name does not sound familiar to you, if you look him up on IMDb, you're going to know who Neil McDonough is. Also, Michael T. Williamson. We talked about how awesome Michael T. Williamson is. You know him from Heat, Forrest Gump. He was part of the Streets of Fire. We mentioned Streets of Fire last week. He was in that video, I Can Dream About You. He's one of the singers from that Dan Hartman track, I Can Dream About You. So if you
okay,
yeah,
that was okay.
Right. Uh-huh.
I was trying to figure out who he was, but
yeah.
Right.
So yeah, Michael T. Williamson, Neil McDonough. There's also Sarah Jones in this movie, and it centers on a retired rodeo legend, Joe Wainwright, played by Neil McDonough. He has his own farm, and he has a house. He lives with his daughter. I think. Wait, does he live with? He lives with his daughter and his grandson. Everything seems fine. The rodeo is years removed from being a rodeo champ, a rodeo legend. Okay, he's now in his 60s. He's just trying to relax. He has a ton of injuries. He can't go back to the circuit. The only problem is his grandson, played by Graham Harvey, he has a brain tumor. And you've heard these kind of stories before, whether it's a movie disease of the week or a movie released in theaters where someone is dying and they need to just get a lot of funds to save the child or the parent or whatnot. It's a very familiar type of story. Thing is, does it work with The Last Rodeo? Now, Joe Wainwright, when he realizes his grandson has a brain tumor and they need about at least $150K for it, he decides to re-enter the rodeo circuit, specifically in this, I think, some kind of Legends tournament, which would net him, the winner, a lot of money. So what Joe does is he enters the circuit along with his former bull riding partner, and that role is played by Michael T. Williamson. They hit the road, try to enter the rodeo, and that's their journey. Will they? Both of them are in their 60s, maybe even mid to late 60s, around early to mid 60s. Will they actually pull it off as a team? And can Joe Wainwright get the number 1 spot, make enough money so then he can help his grandson's operation, help pay for it? His daughter is played by Sarah Jones, and his daughter understands that, well, having her pops in the rodeo circuit is not a good thing because it really it drove a wedge between her relationship with her father, and her father has a lot of demons on his own, which I'm not going to mention for spoilers. You get to really learn about Joe Wainwright. He is a widower as well. So you get to learn about the story of the father's relationship with his daughter, father's relationship with his family, also the father's relationship with his former rodeo partner, Charlie, again played by Michael T. Williamson. The movie is directed by John Abnett, best known for such movies as, I'm thinking, I don't have the IMDb right now, but his most popular one is, I think, Fried Green Tomatoes, and he's done other movies as well. He's a very good actor, good director, Abnett. I believe he did Red Corner. I could be wrong right now. I'll look it up on IMDb. Look up John Abnett, JONAVNET. I believe Red Corner with Richard Gere was another Abnett film, but he's
A Righteous Kill. Well,
Righteous Kill. That was with De Niro and.
I thought he did. He did. Boomtown. He did the TV show Boomtown.
Right. Boomtown.
And I was going to say Michael T. Williamson and Neil McDonough were both in Boomtown.
Oh, very good. And
that's an awesome show, by the way.
Excellent,
Eric. Two seasons.
I remember watching Boomtown, and when it ended, do you remember this? Just being frustrated that it ended. Yeah, I was.
I've only seen the first season because they had 2 seasons on. Because I found it after it came out on DVD.
Yeah,
and I saw the first season. I thought it was awesome, and then I could never find the second season.
Oh, that sucks.
First season's great.
Okay, and they also, by the way, you didn't know this, but Michael T. Williamson, thanks for reminding me, and Neil McDonough starred in Justified, a show which is right up Eric Holmes' alley. The problem is Eric Holmes does not watch TV shows per se, and it's so funny because
John Abnett did that too.
Oh yeah, Really? Oh, he worked on. Oh, okay. He did an episode or two of Justified. I think he did.
Yeah, 10 episodes.
I could be wrong about Red Corner. Did you check on Red Corner who directed Red Corner? But I know definitely Abnett.
Yeah, he did Red Corner.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Johnny
Up
Abnett.
Close and Personal, The War. Oh, The War. Okay.
The War. Yeah. Elijah Wood and Kevin Costner. Very stable, solid, close to excellent filmmaker. A lot of the 80s and 90s, he was a big studio get as a director. And over the years, he's carved out a great filmmaking career, both in the cinema and television front. And he does a great job on The Last Rodeo as well. Again, it's directed by Abnett, who, by the way, co-wrote the script with Neil McDonough and Derek Presley. It's exclusively in theaters May 23rd via Angel Studios. I don't know, this plot line, Eric, does it sound boring to you? Rodeo guy and on the road, he's facing troubles. Do you think it's too predictable fare for you to watch in general?
Most of it went in one ear, out the other, so probably.
Yeah, it's a type of plot that would go in one ear, out the other. But the good thing about it is has some really great performances by McDonough, Williamson, and Sarah Jones. They're just a really well-done story. Very inspiring. You pretty much know where the story is going to go. That said, even though it may be predictable, there is a lot of great storytelling elements behind The Last Rodeo, and you really get locked into the journey of Joe Wainwright. You can tell Neil McDonough, if you have appreciated McDonough over the years, this is just a very meaty role for him, and he just takes a huge bite out of this role. It's a really inspired performance from McDonough. Again, on that flip side as well, Michael T. Williamson, who's been great in so many films over the years, he gets a really big role as well as Joe Wainwright's best friend and partner in The Last Rodeo. So I'm giving The Last Rodeo. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So this is one of those faith-based films then?
It is faith-based, but when
Along the way, he confronts his past, discovers faith, and proves that true courage lies in faith.
Here's the thing.
That's the IMDb description. That's basically them saying, don't watch this movie.
Oh, no. Here's the thing. When some faith-based movies are worth watching, when they don't slather it with a ton of stuff about Christ and praying.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like just how broad that he confronts his past. That tells me nothing. Discovers faith, tells me nothing. And proves that true courage lies in family. I guess it's a movie about people that have a relationship. Cool. You've told me nothing about the movie.
Right. Yeah. Look, the good thing about The Last Rodeo is it has all of those elements, but it's really good storytelling done. And importantly, the faith stuff is put into the narrative in a comfortable, organic fashion where it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. So if you have a maybe bias to not see faith-based movies, but you really like McDonough and Michael T. Williamson, and this story seems like something you'd watch, I wouldn't worry about it because there's not a lot of find Jesus or find your faith moments. There are a couple of moments where exposition-wise they talk about it, but within the scope of the entire narrative, it fits really right into The Last Rodeo. I surprisingly really enjoyed The Last Rodeo, though predictable, great performances, really well-executed story. Again, in theaters, May 23rd via Angel Studios. I'm giving it 4 stars for The Last Rodeo. Okay, next up, Eric Holmes. Are you a fan of, let's see, we could either do, I'm going to give you either Jane Austen Wrecked My Life or Trail of Vengeance. Which one are you? I think I know which one you're going to.
Last Rodeo put me to sleep, so let's go with Trail of Vengeance.
Okay.
That might get the juices going.
Trail of Vengeance, set against the volatile frontier of 1875. Trail of Vengeance centers on Catherine Atherton, played by Rumor Willis, daughter of Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. Catherine Atherton.
That is true.
That is true. Catherine Atherton, she's a widow because she's a recent widow. Her husband, played by Jeremy Sumpter, was murdered in cold blood in their home out in the middle of the frontier. And she's trying to understand why her husband was murdered. And it's not actually a big spoiler, but here, determined to uncover the truth behind the murder, she seeks out John Scoble, played by Benga Akinabe. My bad on the mispronunciation. He's a man who not only shared a bond of friendship with her late husband, but he also was one of the first pioneering black agent for the Pinkerton Agency. So Atherton's ex-husband or late husband was part of this Pinkerton Agency with John Scoble. And by the way, Jeff Fahey is this colonel, power-hungry colonel, who wants to scoop up all of these former Pinkertons and have them killed because he was the head of this sort of rogue Pinkerton agency, which did a lot of bad things on the frontier. And that is a premise of Trail of Vengeance. Catherine Atherton, after her husband is killed, she goes on a just a focused mission to find her husband's killers and seek vengeance. And that's it. And a lot of the movie deals with Catherine's friendship with John Scoble. There's a lot of horse riding scenes on the trail, and they're getting to know each other. And it all leads up to that final confrontation with Jeff Fahey's character, who plays the colonel, and all the two other henchmen who are the main villains, or the co-villains in the story. Overall, it's a very good, well done, executed Western. And the biggest surprise behind Trail of Vengeance is Rumor Willis's performance. I was wondering, I don't think I've ever seen Rumor Willis as a lead of a movie, let alone a Western, which is, I think, along with film noir, I'll be honest, Westerns are probably at this stage in my life, they're my favorite genre, and it's just really well executed movie. I've got to look up Eric, actually, can you look up Trail of Vengeance? Who is the director? I'll look it up right now. The director does a really good job. Let's see, Trail of Vengeance. I was really surprised at how good this movie was with a very limited budget. It's a really, Johnny Remo. Yeah, he's also
Remo?
Johnny Remo, and he also co-wrote it with Daniel Beckman. Just actually a pretty great Western. I love Jeff Fahey. Eric Holmes loves Jeff Fahey as well, and Fahey has a really good role as the antagonist. The third act of Trail of Vengeance is it's pretty well done. I don't want to say what happens. There's a little bit of a twisty situation, and Rumor Willis as Catherine Atherton, she does a great job, and you believe her when she actually goes toe-to-toe with Fahey and his henchmen. The one strike against Trail of Vengeance for people who are watching is, I'm warning you guys, it's not a wall-to-wall action shoot-'em-up film. There is violence in the beginning, and then a lot of the narrative, I think it's a 97, 98-minute movie. A huge middle portion of it deals with Catherine Atherton and John Scoble getting to know each other on the trail and getting to the final third act. So there's a lot of exposition, a lot of getting to know you, and just a lot of reflective stuff. And if you don't want that, you might be disappointed with Trail of Vengeance. I wasn't, because I really liked the story and I really liked the action-packed third act of Trail of Vengeance. And again, the action is executed very well. I have not gone and clicked onto Johnny Remo's past credits if he has other Westerns. If he has other Westerns. Yeah.
The Isaac Florentine movie coming out, Hellfire, with Scott Lang and Harvey Keitel. Jerry Remo's producing that. There's definitely that. Trail of Vengeance in theaters and VOD May 23rd. I recommend this movie. Don't let this idea about if you don't know Rumor Willis, if she's a good actress or not, or if she can carry her own movie. The answer is, in my opinion, yes. 4 stars for me for Trail of Vengeance. Really enjoyed this solid, well-executed Western. All right, so next up is, any day now we'll get to a Eric Holmes review, because I've been doing the last 2 reviews. Well, Any Day Now is now, because the movie, stupid pun, is Any Day Now. It was released actually maybe about a month or 2 ago in theaters in select release. Most importantly, actually now for this week, it was released May 20th on digital. And Eric Holmes, you saw this movie about a week and a half ago. You interviewed Eric Aronson. I put it up on our Deepest Dream YouTube channel. What can you tell us about Any Day Now? Okay, the plot synopsis of the other one you just reviewed,
which one?
What? I can't remember.
Trail of Vengeance? Okay.
No, that was a good one.
The Last Rodeo.
Was it? Okay, cool. I already forgot it. But this one, here's how you do a plot synopsis. This is the little thing on IMDb. To stage a masterpiece of a heist, you need time, friends, and balls. Steve has 2 of the 3. That's a movie I want to watch. Now, so Any Day Now, it's basically about this real life heist with fictionalized things that happen with the characters. You know, it's one of those situations, I think, where you don't know exactly what happened, so you got a lot of latitude to make stuff up. This Seems like kind of like a lighthearted sort of heist thriller sort of thing. Not so light like the Ocean's movies, but it's not, it's not Rafifi either. It's somewhere in between. It also does the Reservoir Dog things where the heist isn't the main part of the. Now, unlike Reservoir Dogs, you actually see the heist in this, but that's not the main part of the movie because this kind of starts off with the Marty, played by Paul Guilfoyle, comes across Steve, played by Taylor Gray. And he's kind of this mobbish kind of guy, like threatening kind of guy. He's, hey, you owe me, you owe me some money. It's like coming across, and I'm here to break your legs and maybe kill you, that sort of thing. But maybe you do a thing for me and I wipe your debt clean. So you think you know what kind of movie this is. But then as it goes on, Steve's like, oh, I don't know about this, but I kind of have no choice. And he goes along with it. But as it goes on, it's not that sort of mob, like constantly threatening thing. They develop sort of a friendship. So it's weird because it seems like a Tarantino-esque setup, but it ends up more like, hey, we're a happy family. This happens, when the stage is heist.
More like a buddy film, sort of a buddy hang movie.
Yeah. So instead of Marty just being threatening towards Steve the whole time, they kind of dig each other, and there's like a relationship growing between them. And so it was a neat sort of wrinkle for this kind of movie. Now it still has the heist stuff. It still has the gangster kind of stuff. It still has the not gangster, but like underworld kind of stuff. It still has a lot of comedy in it, but it's just a little more, it zags a little bit when you thought it might zig or when you expect it to zig.
Whoa. Okay. So if you don't even mind watching the art heist part of it, the crime caper element, and you're just looking for a friendship, relationship film, is that a good draw?
You get both of it.
Oh, yeah, both of it.
Yeah, it just, so it's not like it's not a heist movie and then it just goes completely in a different direction. It just does both. It's not the formulaic kind of thing that you would expect and still love. Now, if this was a completely formulaic kind of heist movie, I would probably still like it. But it just has that, it pulls a little from more of the like family drama stuff and introduces that into it. And I think it mixes pretty well in this.
So Any Day currently on digital, worth a rental, Eric Holmes, at least.
I would say so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just watch the trailer for this. And the movie is that what the trailer is promising. But at the same time, it's not exact. Like you'll watch the trailer and go, I know what this movie is. You'll watch it. And then as it goes on, you'll realize, oh, no, this isn't the movie I thought it was. But it's still like it. I still like it a lot.
Also, one to note regarding Any Day Now, please check out Eric Holmes' interview with writer-director Eric Aronson. It's a very well-done interview. Aronson talks about, even though having a sort of a small budget for this movie, he wanted to make it upscale, meaning it's his movie. He specifically was saying that it's between a Hollywood movie and an indie movie. He wanted it to be right in the middle. And he actually, Eric and both Erics, they talk in their conversation, they talk about the just really interesting things about making your indie budget look bigger. So that was a big thing for Eric Aronson for Any Day Now. Very good.
I would also say like going down the middle sounds safe, boring, but this is an example where it goes down the middle in the sense that we're going to take the part we like about this and we're going to take the part we like about, we're not going to lean totally on one side or another. We're just going to grab stuff that we like from each side and leave the rest.
Okay, so that is cool. Any Day Now, Eric Holmes, what is your rating?
I will go 4 stars on this.
Okay, good.
Kind of want to go 4.5. So we'll stick at 4. Yeah, I really like the characters, really like the tone. I really like the fact that I'm watching it thinking I know exactly what movie it's going to be. And then the movie goes on. I'm like, oh. So it was a refreshing surprise.
Refreshing surprise. Okay, so that is 4 stars from Eric Holmes for Any Day Now. Again, it's available on digital. I will put a link on our show notes where you can find Eric Holmes' interview with Eric Aronson. If you're interested in Any Day Now, want to learn more about this film, or are very interested in indie filmmaking, maybe both, check out Eric Holmes' interview with Eric Aronson. I will have links in our show notes. Finally, let's get to something that is near and dear to Eric Holmes' heart. Actually, there's a couple things we're going to end with. But first off, Eric Holmes, Uncle Roy Kickstarter. It ends on Sunday, May 25th. you know at least one of the filmmakers. You interviewed the filmmakers, or the filmmaker and maybe the producer, Don Michelson, behind Uncle Roy.
Don Michelson
Don
and
Michelson?
Carrie Pickett.
Okay, so tell me about that interview you did about a month and a half ago, which I haven't put up yet on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. I feel horrible about it.
So, Don Michelson directed, her and Carrie Pickett did Finding Her Beat, and then Don Michelson did Minnesota Mean. And I love both documentaries, and now they're both starting the Kickstarter for a documentary called Uncle Roy, which, if I remember correctly, it was Carrie Pickett's uncle, and he's got they had a teaser trailer, I guess, or
it's up on Kickstarter. Yeah,
Carrie Pickett apparently just has an insane amount of footage about him, and they just want to put together a documentary, and that little bit they put together seemed interesting enough. And on top of that, Minnesota Mean and Finding Her Beat, if you've seen both of those, you'll know that Don Michelson and Carrie Pickett are talented as MFers. And I mean, Uncle Roy already sounds interesting as it is. And the fact that they're doing it just elevates it and gets me that much more excited for it.
Okay, again, my fault. Eric Holmes' interview is about a month and a half old. I will put it up on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel this week.
Yeah, it'll say donate to the Kickstarter, and by the time that interview is up, it'll be late. But
yes,
the Kickstarter ends this Sunday. If you want to, I believe they already reached their goal, but stretch goals are always helpful.
Eric Holmes, yes, you are correct. They reached their goal of 40,000. There are stretch goals on their Facebook page, so they have a couple more days left. I will hasten my upload of that interview. Please check us out. Check it out on CinemAddicts YouTube channel. Most importantly, check out the interview over at what happened? My thing just turned up. Oh yeah, check out the interview on our show notes. I will leave links for the Uncle Roy interview with Eric Holmes and there's Don Michelson, right? And Carrie Pickett. Yes. That will be in our show notes. And also, I will leave a link where the Uncle Roy Kickstarter, that link will be up for another several days. So I'll put it up very immediately. I'm so sorry to the filmmakers about this. The good news is they reached their goal, and now we're in the middle of stretch goals for the next couple of days. And who knows, maybe in a year from now or a year and a half from now, Eric Holmes will be interviewing them for the release of Uncle Roy. He's very into this area of filmmaking, documentary filmmaking. He's interviewed a lot of documentary filmmakers over the years.
The thing that Don Michelson and Carrie Pickett does well is they'll have with Minnesota Mean and Finding Her Beat, they're both about groups of people that are doing a thing, and you just fall in love with the characters. It's like with both of them, I just want to keep seeing more of it. With the Finding Her Beat, I had to watch a documentary of that every year just to keep up with these people and live with them for a bit. Same with Minnesota Mean. Following their roller derby team. So what are they going to do next year? Let's watch another documentary and see what they do next year. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to Uncle Roy.
Yeah. By the way, I haven't seen any of these movies, and I'm in a total deficit from the last several years. I've had to listen to Eric Holmes actually support them, and I feel horrible. Actually, I don't feel horrible because Bruce Purkey hasn't seen them too. Bruce Purkey, you're in the attic. I'm going to lay 50% of that blame on you too, Bruce Purkey.
Greg,
what? Can I blame it?
Don't feel horrible. Feel excited. Because now you get to watch Finding Her Beat and Minnesota Mean for the first time.
So if I watch those movies, can you and I actually do a witch hunt on Bruce Purkey for not watching these Michelson and Pickett films? Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay. Bruce Purkey, get ready.
Sign off on that.
No. All right.
We'll sharpen our knives and come party.
All right. So here's the thing. Uncle Roy, we celebrate a lot of indie filmmaking, and Eric Holmes has been really finding his beat with these movies. So check out Uncle Roy Kickstarter, May 25th, and then we will be covering Uncle Roy once it is actually in the can and ready to release. Okay, so that is it for this CinemAddicts. Finally, Patreon for this month. We are covering the movies Owning Mahoney, Tears of the Sun. Okay, those are the two movies. Our assigned... Yes, and Old Boy. Never heard of this movie. Assigned pick Old Boy is going to be next week for our...
remake of the Spike Lee classic.
Yeah, a remake of a Spike Lee classic. And of course, Director Park is the original filmmaker behind Old Boy, Spike Lee being the one who did a remake some years later. I actually covered that junket way back in the day, but who cares? But yeah, again, Owning Mahoney, Tears of the Sun for this month's Patreon. We're spotlighting the year 2000. Also, again, the assigned pick is Old Boy. Thank you, Patreon members, for supporting us on CinemAddicts. Thank you, listeners of this podcast and people who watch our stuff on our Deepest Dream and Cinematics YouTube channel, for just supporting us all the way. Again, those are the ways you can support us, whether it's Patreon, becoming members of our YouTube channel, or if you just want to hang with us, join us on our Cinematics Facebook group. There are some great, wonderful people who are members who know. I will throw me and Eric Holmes under the bus. They know more movies than me and Eric Holmes combined. Probably some. There's people like Joseph Bridges, William Lindis, Ken Cunningham, Matt Stillman, Chad Wilfong, Angie Clark. We love Angie Clark. Shannon Snook, Tyler Noe, Pete Abeyta. So many great, wonderful people over at the Cinematics Facebook group who actually, there's also, even though he doesn't do too much social media, several weeks ago, Eric Holmes was on the 4-5 podcast with Jason Kleberg. So many great movie reviews and movie suggestions and movie chat and chatter, like the middle class, film class guys, they like to say gab and chatter. There's a lot of gab and chattering over at the Cinematics Facebook group. So I will also, the links is there to join our Facebook group for if you want some really daily great movie recommendations that Eric and I don't give, by the way. We're off in our own world. Maybe Bruce will throw in some more, but a lot of the great movie recommendations are from our members. So thank you, members, for just being part of our Cinematics community for so many years. And Eric Holmes, I'm going to leave with a couple of messages of his own before we throw it over to Bruce Purkey. Eric, what do you got to say?
Just how I'm excited for Owning Mahoney and Tears of the Sun, but very excited for Old Boy. And I think I might, because I haven't watched the Spike Lee version. I might watch that. Because I know
that's too much work, Eric Holmes.
I've seen Old Boy, so I don't have to watch it again. Hey, I want to watch the Spike Lee version, compare it to like the Spike Lee Old Boy and the Park Chan-wook Old Boy. But Greg, after you watch Old Boy and you get excited as hell because the movie's so good, then you get to watch Lady Vengeance, which is the best of the trilogy, in my opinion.
Best of the trilogy. Okay. Just remember.
And Mr. Vengeance is also great.
Eric Holmes, remember, this is your Patreon this month. It's your turn to do some research. So Owning Mahoney and Tears of the Sun. Me and Bruce Purkey, we already messaged each other. We're just going to phone it in. We're going to fax it in. We're going to Pony Express it in. This is your month. You're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting from Patreon. Are you okay with that, Eric Holmes?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'll give you a little taste.
Okay.
Of some of the trivia in Owning Mahoney.
Okay.
Mahoney was not, in fact, owned.
Okay. See, this is the kind of research you are missing if you're not part of the Patreon community. So this is Eric's month. Join our Patreon. Join our Cinematics crew. Yes, sir.
Tears of the Sun. As it turns out, the sun is too hot to be able to have any sort of tears. They don't just, they never become liquid.
Oh, okay. You're missing some academia from Eric Holmes this month. So get on Patreon this month, get on Cinematics, and most importantly, get on some really good movies. And selfishly, please give us some of your movie picks as well. We love you guys.
Stars, historically, don't have eyes.
Okay.
Or tear ducts, so.
By the way, Eric, you just did enough research for next week. No more research. You're good. You're done. Don't tell Bruce Purkey because he's still. Yeah. I still hear.
We should cut that out and save it for the Patreon.
Cut that out.
That's a kind of deep dive trivia that the Patreons.
By the way, can you do something about your audio because I hear Bruce Purkey sniveling and groveling a little bit during the.
No, that's the dogs.
Oh, okay. Are you sure? Okay. All right. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Usually it's Bruce barking at the window, but it's the dogs.
Speaking of Bruce barking at the window, hear him bark for a few more. Oh, by the way, Bruce also has a review of the Akira Kurosawa classic Ron. So you're going to have some really great stuff from Bruce Purkey. Here he is. Bruce Purkey is in the Cinematic.
Welcome to the Cinem-Attic, the attic of cinema. Once again, I have cracked the seal, broken the bonds that hold me in this dusty attic where all I do is talk with the various creatures that crawl under the eaves and make their way next to me in my shackles. But I've made it out for a little bit, just long enough to discuss the movies that Eric allowed me to screen this week via Greg. I guess that's how it works, right? Greg sends the stuff over to Eric. Eric somehow funnels them through some little slot, and then I put them into the combined VHS TV player that, I don't know how it works with screeners. I don't know how he gets them on VHS. He somehow does that, but he wants to make sure I get the best and most vintage experience for these brand new screeners that I get. So I don't know why that is exactly. I think it's just part of the experience he wants me to have as part of his menagerie of victims. I don't want to spoil Barbarian. Let's just say it's the attic version of Barbarian kind of up there. So this week I have 3 screeners, 1 recommend. I'm going to be discussing The New Boy, if that's a screener. And if you didn't get that already, I'm also going to discuss The Surrender. They're all thes, aren't they? The Surrender. Then there is the 40th reissue anniversary of Ron, which I have never seen, so it was good for me. And then another epic movie as far as recommends go, I did catch up finally with The Brutalist, which just dropped on HBO Max. And I'm not stuttering when I say HBO Max because that's what they're called now. Again, I don't know. Maybe next they're going to go back to HBO. And then after that, they're going to go to home box office. And then after that, I don't know, because I think that's what they started as home box office. Anyway, let's get to it. What do we got? What do we got here? First off, should it be The Surrender or The New Boy? I'm trying to decide. I think we'll go with The New Boy. The New Boy is directed by Warwick Thornton. I do believe Greg said when he got this that it was directed by a director that we like from a movie that we've seen, and I either just don't remember that I've seen a movie by this director because I went and looked at their IMDb, or maybe I never saw a movie by this director because I did not recognize any of the titles on this director's IMDb. Once again, Greg will probably chime in on that because he obviously has some memory of this director. I believe the director's out of Australia. This movie's out of Australia. It's also the second movie within a month that has the same basic premise, because this movie starts with a caption. And if you remember, we watched, what was that movie? The Mugai. And we talked about how it got all supernatural and kind of got very tropey and middle of the road. But it started with a great, interesting concept, which was historically in Australia, there was this whole period where, kind of similar to North America, where Australians were, essentially white Australians were taking indigenous children away from their families and, quote, re-educating them to be more white or to be more aligned with what the predominant kind of colonial society at the time was giving. So this movie kind of goes with that idea. And we had lamented when we saw The Mugai that we wished the whole movie had been about that. Now this movie is kind of all about that. It starts out with a young boy, once again, indigenous boy, and he's running around in the outback and being chased, and he eventually gets caught by two guys. And you get the idea that they're just one of many events like this where he's caught and he's taken and whisked off to a orphanage, quote orphanage, re-education church. It's a Christian church, of course. It must be Catholic because they have a nun. The priest is gone. There's just a couple nuns there. Specifically, you've got Cate Blanchett as Sister Eileen. Come on. I don't want to say it, do I? I don't want to say it, no. You also have, let me get a few names in here. Sister Mom is played by Deborah Mailman, sorry. Then you have the new boy, who's the main guy, the kid. He's played by Oswan Reed. And then you've got George, played by Wayne Blair. So Sister Mom she seems to have been an indigenous person that's kind of been raised probably in this Catholic environment. And now she's basically become a nun or kind of like an assistant nun. I don't know. She doesn't seem to have the same power as Sister Eileen. Sister Mom, though, is kind of more beloved. She seems to do all the cooking and kind of cares for the kids, whereas Sister Eileen is really running the joint and kind of more what you expect as like a traditional nun, teaching them, making them sing hymns and teaching them the ways of the Lord and stuff. And then the George guy, he's kind of just the caretaker that kind of comes around and helps out, kind of a rough and tumble dude that's out there in the outback, but he doesn't play a huge role, but he does come in and out. And then the new boy, like I said, he's your main guy. You follow him. Of course, he doesn't speak English. He's scared. He's a little freaked out. His first night there, he's sleeping under the bed. Doesn't know anything about this Western religion whatsoever, and he's just kind of deer in the headlights. There's a bunch of other boys there who obviously have been taken in the same way, but now they've pretty much been, to various degrees, assimilated, and they know the hymns, they know what they're supposed to do, and they're dressing more Western, cutting their hair and washing and wearing Western clothes, all that kind of stuff. And eventually they kind of, quote, graduate and go off and end up working places, probably working as kind of semi-slave labor, which is not such a great outcome for them. But according to the Western world, that is a great outcome for them because now they are not heathens anymore, that kind of a thing. So, pretty interesting concept, but is it an interesting movie? And that is the question. First of all, it looks beautiful. And you know, when you start a movie review saying, boy, it sure does look beautiful, that can be great because there could be a lot more to come behind that. But sometimes that's what you say when the movie didn't give you a lot. And this movie kind of didn't give me a lot. I know there's a term that Eric will use, which is indie porn. When he says indie porn, he means it kind of has all those hallmarks of what you love about an indie movie, but also just narratively kind of doesn't go anywhere. It'll just sit and just, I think his description he'd give is it stares at a door opening and closing when you could just go to the next scene. Like you spend all your time watching nothing. This movie isn't quite that bad, but there's levels of this. Now, we're supposed to definitely be looking through the eyes of the new boy and kind of getting to discover his journey and how does he kind of cope with this world he doesn't understand and what's going to happen to him. Is he going to be abused? Is he going to be destroyed by this experience? Is he going to be able to escape it? Like what's going to happen? That's kind of your basic expectations. What it does though, this is a little, and I don't know where this point of view comes from. I don't know if this is written by an indigenous person or is it based on experience, but unfortunately for me, it does two things. First of all, it kind of plays on a version of the trope of the magic, and I'm not going to say the word, but let's say in American cinema, when you were showing the Black experience or something, especially historically, where it verges on the edge of a Black experience, or there's a Black character in a movie. A lot of times they call the magic, I'll just say Black character, where there's this sort of, it's also the same version of this, the noble savage quote, right? This thing where you kind of bend over backwards to venerate or to almost deify the indigenous person, which becomes as racist as just showing them in a totally racist light. If you do this kind of deifying thing, you're also dehumanizing them and not treating them as a truly, fully rounded human being. And I think this movie unfortunately does a bit of that because there is a level of magic realism, which at first when it appeared, I thought, oh, they're not doing this, are they? Is this just a metaphor? Oh, maybe it is. But he starts doing things that are kind of, quote, magical. And I thought that maybe, like I said, I thought maybe it was just metaphorical, or maybe it was just supposed to be his imagination. But there's some certain events that happen in here where I think we're supposed to actually believe that they're happening and everyone sees them happening. And when that happened, that it could have worked in some movies, but in this movie, it fully took me out of it. So you have this combination in this movie of, to me, a story that kind of goes nowhere, where you just have this character in this really tough situation, just kind of hanging out and never going anywhere, like narratively, except that he does a few magical things, and that's supposed to change the world around him, I guess. I think if anything, you say Sister Eileen is supposed to have the biggest arc, but I don't really know what. Well, yeah, for example, you expect in the story like this, he's going to go to the situation, it's going to be like a cuckoo's nest kind of a thing, right? Where he is a fish out of water and it is cruel and it is just terrible. And you're going to learn how terrible this environment was, which I'm sure it was for a lot of people. But as bad as the situation is, they don't show Sister Eileen or the other nuns or anything really being that terrible to them. They're not beating them. They're not abusing them. Sure, they're doing something terrible as far as taking them from their world and kind of essentially training them to a world of servitude, but they're not actively physically abusing them or trying to berate them, or they're just true believers, the nuns are, that the world of Jesus is going to save, quote, these children. So in that sense, the good and the bad and all those kind of morality pieces you'd expect in here isn't very clear as well. It's just kind of this mystical new guy, new boy, goes into their midst, and you're supposed to just believe that he's, I guess, a magical being. I don't know, and that's all I could get out of it. I really felt this, once again, like the Mugai, was just a wholly missed opportunity to let's just tell this darn story that they set up in 2 movies now within a month or so with us. Just tell the story. I want to know what happened in those days in that world. I don't want it to be magical. I don't want to have there be a monster. I want you to just tell me the story. I want to know what happened to the people back then and what became of them. And I think that would be at least an interesting and solid story, if not a great story. But this, like the new guy, is a miss for me, unfortunately. So I'm going to go 2 stars for The New Boy. Even amidst all of the great cinematography and obviously super solid acting, you've got Cate Blanchett. Even amidst all that, it was just kind of a dud. All right, The Surrender. This is a movie I think is going to be coming out onto Shudder, but I believe it has might have a short-lived theater experience. Usually they do. I might be wrong about that. I did not research it fully. Sorry, guys. So hopefully one of the other guys has watched it and give you some more details. Directed by Julia Max. 2 main stars here. There's several people, but the 2 main ones that you go with here is a daughter. When I say daughter, like an adult daughter, she's probably in her late 20s, early 30s at the most, probably late 20s. And that's Megan, played by Colby Minifie. That name kind of struck a chord with me, and her face kind of struck a chord with me as far as, do I know this person? I think I know this person. And then I went back and checked and I said, yeah, I do know this person. She's in The Boys. I don't remember the character's name, but in The Boys, with all of the superheroes in the main, essentially their Avengers, there is the main like corporate assistant woman who slowly gets more and more of a role as the series goes on. And she is played by Colby Minifie, and she's a very memorable character in that series. So I was like, oh, wow, she's playing a very different character here in this movie, The Surrender. Anyway, she's the daughter, adult daughter, and then her mother is Barbara, played by Kate Burton. And at the beginning of this movie, Megan's father is going through the last days of his life. He's essentially on, I don't call it death watch anymore, but he basically is at home, has been very ill for a long time. He's being cared for by the mom, and the adult daughters come there, and she's helping out in his last days. And sure enough, and you can tell there's some stress between the daughter and the mom, which is not an unusual thing in the world. And sure enough, after a very short period of time, he passes, and then they're there with him. And you kind of get a feeling really quickly that throughout the last few days, even while he's alive still in the movie, that the mom has kind of been going to any source for a way to maybe save him or to heal him in the kind of the way people do sometimes. Traditional medicine hasn't been working. Maybe it's cancer, for example. Traditional medicine hasn't been working for somebody, and they start looking at, and I remember when I was younger, it would be like new age healing. But I mean, you say like holistic healing or holistic medicines or non-traditional medicines, anything you can do to grasp onto to try to help this other person. And this movie takes that idea after his death, and the mom has come up with a way that she thinks can bring him back. And the daughter is absolutely not happy about this, in fact, very unhappy about this, and is just really distraught. And to some degree, she's looking at her mom like her mom has gone off the deep end. But based on a couple short scenes, the daughter essentially decides to pretty much go with it. So at least her mom can kind of come to closure and have peace, even though the daughter knows this is just her mom basically going on a crazy wild goose chase that's just supernatural gobbledygook. The daughter figures if she at least goes through it, that her mom will come out the other end, and the daughter won't be the bad guy, right? And her mom will go out the other end and have to kind of face reality. So that's why the daughter kind of sticks with it. Because that was my first thing in this movie, is you're going to be like, well, why would the daughter go along with this cockamamie plan that they've got? I'm not going to go through what all the plan is, but it's on Shudder, so you can guess that it's probably something supernatural. And essentially, most of the movie is that plan. Now, this movie is definitely better than The New Boy, which I just went through. But this movie also does have a bit of a great concept that isn't quite played out fully for me in a way that is fully satisfying. First of all, super solid performances by both those leads. We do have another character that comes in too. I'm not going to describe who it is because that kind of gives away what their plan is. But let's just say when the plan goes into action, it becomes kind of a limited storytelling in far as there's just 2 or 3 characters pretty much in the home with the dead father trying to make things better. And it is done in a really serious, it's not playing it for laughs, which I'm kind of torn whether it would have been better if they played it for laughs, but they do play it seriously, deadly seriously, and they take it seriously as the characters do. I think the role of Megan, played by Colby Minifee, is great because at least she's kind of like our voice of reason. She, in a sense, is the audience stand-in. So as kind of some of these super unorthodox methods are being employed, she's kind of saying, what the heck are you doing? Or let's come on, this is ridiculous, kind of like we would. And as these efforts get more extreme, you're like, oh my gosh, she's going to have to just back out now. She has to stop this. But she doesn't. And that is like when I'm like, that's when I was like really leaning forward. Oh, this movie's getting really interesting. Then it doesn't get very interesting. That's the problem. It gets really interesting. I would say the first half, maybe almost 2/3, even though it was a slow burn, I was sold. I was bought into it. I was really interested to see where it goes. And I really liked the way it was going there. And then it just kind of didn't have a great way to end it, unfortunately. And I think that's the biggest knock on this movie for me. The biggest failure is the final third, the final act, just kind of lays there. It doesn't give me that extra oomph that I needed. I needed to either fully go for it and go gonzo in a horror movie extent, or it needed to fully go somewhere. But it just took the idea and it just kind of fizzled out as for me. I still think it's good enough to recommend. I'll probably go 3 stars on this. I mean, it's not a high recommend. It's a barely recommend. I think if you're into horror movies, you're into pretty well acted dramatic horror movies, strength on the dramatic and weakness on the horror, much more dramatic than is horror. It's really mostly a family grief drama. But the problem is we've had a lot of family grief dramas in the world of horror that have done it, to me, way better. You've got things like Hereditary. You've got, what was the name of that movie? Oh my gosh, my name has forgotten it now. Relic. You've got some really well done grief horror movies, and you've got to live up to that kind of level, to me. And this movie, unfortunately, doesn't quite go there. Although it has the bones for it. It's on the edge of being great, and it ends up being only, unfortunately, okay. So I'm going to go 3 stars for The Surrender. Promise, I would definitely like to see what else Julia Max can do. I think maybe with a little more budget, a little more script, she could do something really interesting. Okay, the third movie. The movie you'd expect to be the best of the week. And guess what? For me, it definitely was the best of the week. And that's the movie Ron by Akira Kurosawa. 40th anniversary reissue. I believe it's probably making it into a few theaters. And if you're like me, and Ron has always been a bit of a homework movie, or you're like me, and I've seen, what have I seen? Like at least 4 or 5. I need to see more. I mean, there's probably at least 5 or 6 Kurosawa movies that are on my list of I need to get to them, and I always don't get to them. And I'm always happy when I do watch them, like Akira ended up being fantastic. And of course, The Seven Samurai is great, and Rashomon's great. I forget, Dreams is great. But there's a few big ones I haven't seen. I know Redbeard is a favorite of Greg. High and Low I'd like to see a lot. Yojimbo I haven't seen. I haven't seen Theater of Blood. There's a bunch of big ones I haven't seen. I really want to. And Ron was one of those. And it's funny, when Greg had sent this out to us that said that, hey, this is out, there's a screener of it. I think it's been about 10 years since they made the 4K version of this. And now they're doing the 40th anniversary reissue of it for people to kind of catch up to it that are younger, or like me who should have seen it and didn't. And Greg had mentioned that he remembered seeing the Siskel and Ebert review of this, and I do too. I was a huge fan of Siskel and Ebert basically in the beginning, like when they were doing it on public broadcasting. And they kind of were a big part of helping me kind of broaden my horizons into more art movies and really just getting more experimental and just trying things that I wouldn't. And I remember them loving Ron and them going over and over about how fantastic it was. So this movie had a lot to live up to for me. And it kind of is one of those movies that feels like homework for a lot of people. And I don't think I'd probably include it too. I want to watch it. I think it's going to be good, but I kind of don't get around to it. Anyway, long story, still long. It's a fantastic movie. Now, what's your basic? It's pretty much known as a version of King Lear. This was directed in the later section of Akira Kurosawa's life. He was in his 70s, I believe, when he filmed this. His eyesight was nearly gone. He'd been trying to develop this movie for about 10 years by the time it actually came to fruition. I believe it was the most expensive Japanese movie made at the time. And at this time, Kurosawa in Japan was kind of out of vogue. Like he had his heyday in the 60s, especially like late 50s, early in the 60s throughout. But by the 70s and 80s, he just was kind of considered like he was done as far as Japanese and cinema was. And in fact, he was having to get like international funding for a lot of his films. I think this movie is a co-production of a French-Japanese co-production. So he had to get money from other countries, which seems kind of crazy, right? It would be like, I don't know, who do we have now? I don't know, you get a Kubrick or a Spielberg or just somebody who we consider a renowned filmmaker, not be able to get funding and having to go, I guess you say Coppola recently had to get his own funding for his movie. The difference is Coppola made Megalopolis and Kurosawa made Ron. Much different. Like I said, it's a King Lear adaptation. I'm not a big, huge reader of Shakespeare. I've read, once again, just like Kurosawa, I've done a lot of the basics, but King Lear is not one that's under my belt. So basic story here is you've got this lord, this is kind of a samurai era Japan, and this lord Hidetora Lord Monji. And Hidetora is getting to the point where he wants to hang up the sword. He wants to hang up the katana. He's had it all. He's basically been in wars and battles most of his life, but he has conquered the area around him, and he basically owns this whole area. He's got multiple castles. And at the beginning of this movie, they're on a boar hunt, and they're all sitting around afterwards. He's there with his 3 sons and a bunch of other people that follow him and a few other lords in the area, but he's obviously the bigwig. He's the one that runs the joint. And Hidetora says, like, I've had it all, and now I want to hand this to my children. I want to divide up my kingdom among my children. And he just goes to this thing and he says, child number 1, I'm going to give you the main castle, and you run the things. Child number 2, you get this castle. Child number 3, you get this castle. And for the rest of my life, as a retired warlord, I'm going to just go and live for a time with each of you. And there's son number 1, Taro, is great. I love it. You are awesome. You're the best guy ever. Son number 2, Jiro, he's awesome. You are the best. Love you, Dad. Let's do this. And then son number 3, Saburo, says, you're crazy. This is a terrible idea. People are corrupt, and no matter what, it's not going to work. And the father has tried to tell them how to do this by getting 3 arrows. And first he gives them each an arrow individually, and he says, break this arrow. And of course they break it easily. And then he gives them each a bundle of 3 arrows. And he says, now break it all 3. And son number 1 tries to break the arrows, and it's not strong enough because bundled together, they're stronger. And of course he's telling him a parable. Son number 2, same thing. Son number 3, the one that's, you're crazy. What are you doing, man? He just bends it over his knee and says, people are going to find a way to break these arrows. He's like the voice of reason, but also he's the voice of reason to the guy who's like the most powerful guy in the land. That's dangerous. And Dad immediately is just, Saburo, you are banished. I'm angry with you. Banish you. And his number 1 man, Rose's number 1 man, says, no, he's right. He's speaking from the heart. You should listen to him. I banish you too. So those 2 get banished immediately. So then the rest of the movie, gosh, this is a good movie. It's so good. I talked about earlier how you say a movie's beautiful, and that could be a knock against it, kind of, because nothing else is going for it. This thing has everything going for it, and it's really beautiful, and it's epic in a way that you are not epic anymore. So you think of epic battle scenes, I don't know, like Helm's Deep in The Lord of the Rings. It's considered one of the best siege, giant armies attacking a fortress. Sure, those are great looking, but it's CGI and composites and all these kind of effects. In this movie, there is a central battle scene. There's several battle scenes, but there's a central battle scene that not only in the story, the narrative, it has a huge character importance. So you understand what's happening to a character during this huge battle scene directly in the middle of this movie. But also, it is epic and beautiful and shot in a way that is fantastic, amazing, striking, visually one of the best battles ever put on film, if not right up there in the top, probably 5 battle scenes ever put on film. And if you take that and take away any battle scenes that have CGI, and you just use battle scenes that have real people in it, that becomes an even shorter list. And this is very close to the top of that list too. And I think he had 1,200 extras. Each of them had handmade armor. It took 2 years or 3 years to make the armor. And then there was like 200 or 300 horses. And he does this great thing where it's like you have the different armies. And I'm not going to say who the armies are because discovering the pieces of this movie are fantastic. The armies, like each soldier has a little flag that basically is like strapped to his back. I don't know if that was a thing at the time, but apparently that was. So you have yellow flags on a whole set of one army and red flags on a whole set of the other army. So it's easy to follow like who's with whom throughout this movie because they have different colored flags. Super easy and super nice and visually and colorfully striking. And then the one thing about this battle sequence that's so amazing is when it gets to that point, and this is the only time he kind of does this stylistic thing in the movie, but when it gets to that point, the sound effects, like the horses and the battling and the cracking and the flying arrows and all this stuff, all those sounds fall out of the movie. And just the score is in there and some voices, but mostly just the score. So it becomes like almost this silent, it's not there's music obviously, but it almost becomes this silent battle in the midst of this incredible violence and just totally mega epic events that are going on around as you're watching it. It's also a hugely emotionally devastating moment in the center of the movie. But last, I'll just kind of go back really quickly as far as the narrative goes. What's really interesting as this goes on, though, is once you have this Lord who has given away his power to his 3 sons, essentially the movie from that point forward is him dealing with the repercussions of the life he's lived. Like he's lived a life where he has basically used violence and war to attain everything. And then the entire movie becomes an unraveling and a discovery and a discussion in a movie form of how do all of those demons, how does that karma that he's built up come back to you in the end of your life? He just wants to live in peace and let his sons rule the world, but the world isn't the way that he wants it to be, and it never was because he got there at the edge of a sword. So how's that going to come back to him? And how are his 3 sons going to become treacherous or non-treacherous? And you have to throw in there, and I have to mention her, Lady played by Mieko Harada, is so good as a character. And you can call her a villain. You can call her a villain in like almost a Lady Macbeth style villain, like who is conspiring and conniving, or you could call her, I don't know, you could call her the hero in a sense. I mean, if you want to look at her as someone who's trying to finally get justice. But whatever you might say, her character is fantastic and gives an energy to the second half of this movie that is very needed because, like I mentioned before, there is no intermission, but that huge battle sequence I talked about is essentially right in the center of this movie. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that leads up to that, and there's a fallout of that. And the fallout of that leaves our Lord in a situation that makes him a little less dynamic, although what's happening to him is very important and interesting. But the second half of this movie also really kind of turns a lot on the actions and the manipulations of Lady Kieda and what she's all about. There's a scene, once again, I'm not going to say much. People who've seen the movie know what I'm talking about. I want to leave it kind of unknown because I bet there's a ton of people, younger than me mostly, I'm sure, but 30 or younger, I bet there's a ton of people who've never seen Ron. And if you're a lover of film, especially classic, great film that you haven't seen, this is one I'd say get under your belt. But there's a scene that involves a character sending someone off to say, get me the head of a person. And the way that subplot plays out, and there's a lot of interesting subplots in this movie too, I haven't even talked about. There's a lot of characters that go different directions, but that bring me the head of somebody subplot is amazing in its own right, the way that plays out. And I won't say anything else. You can probably get the idea that I love this movie, and I do love it. It's very fantastic. 5 stars, classic. I expect you get overhyped on these classic movies, and a lot of times they disappoint you. And they do a lot of times for me as well. But every so often I get one of these that are hyped as 5-star classics. And they really are a 5-star classic to me. And I just think about it and I love it. And it's just so good. And even just to the point of the last shot of this movie is something, as you're watching the whole movie, that you would not expect. It's not a character you've been following most of the movie, but you do know who the character is and what their story is. And it's such an it's such an unconventional way to end this movie compared to what I would have thought it would have been. But it also is kind of the perfect ending for the movie as you start thinking about it and as you start seeing it. Just little things like that. And just, I can't even go on anymore. I'll gush too much about this movie. So once again, 5-star classic, Ron. You can find this in a lot of different places. If you have a large screen and you have 4K abilities, I'd say go for that. But it's worth watching in whatever format you've got. Okay, last but not least, I'll just do a quick mention of The Brutalist. The Brutalist is now available on HBO Max. And it is, of course, known because it was one of the front runners for quite a while for Best Picture last year. Also known because of its epic length. It's almost 3.5 hours. It was in theaters. It got a really good rollout, a lot of hype. It was also noted because it had things like, I think it was shot in, was it VistaVision? I think that's what I remember correctly, which is, we'll talk about the formats. If you're into film formats, you can look that up. And also it had the classic things you'd have in those epic old movies, which it has an overture at the beginning. It has an actual intermission in the middle. All you really know about this movie is directed by Brady Corbett, starring Adrian Brody, which won the Best Actor, not Oscar, I do believe, because he got known for the terrible speech, apparently. I didn't watch the Oscars this year, but I know about that. And then Felicity Jones and Guy Pearce, the big three in this movie. Oh, there's a bunch of characters, obviously. And essentially, it's just following the Adrian Brody's character and kind of just his immigrant experience in America. The immigrant experience in just post-World War II, in his case, having fled Nazi Germany in the Holocaust, survived the Holocaust, being split from his wife, who is still left stuck over in Europe for a good chunk of the movie. For the first half of the movie, she's stuck in Europe. And his experience in just being, like a lot of immigrants, a nobody, quote, in America, and having to find a way and how to survive in America. And people who are trained in their careers and their lives as artists and architects and doctors and whatever they might be. And they come to America, and as far as Americans are concerned, they are just another immigrant who can essentially just do day labor or live on the street. They don't care, whatever it is. And essentially the first half of this movie is following him in various ways, slowly trying to get his footing and to regain his true identity to himself, which is as this really artistic architect, which was getting some renown and had some renown in Europe, and kind of trying to make his place. And he is one of the avant-garde kind of architects too. A brutalist, obviously he's a brutalist architect, but he's got that Bauhaus school. He's part of that whole movement that would have been crushed and taken away from by the Nazis unless they had the proper Aryan approach to things. Anyway, his kind of rise and fall in the first half of this movie is pretty darn engaging. Really well shot. The period, the look and the feel of the whole world is really well realized. And I was a little skeptical of this movie. I mean, kind of overhyped and all this stuff. But definitely the first half, I got pretty engaged with his character and his plight, and just kind of a lot of this movie is about the interplay between this moneyed power of the Guy Pearce kind of character and his family, and how they use, and they'll idolize kind of like a pet, this new architect that they get with Adrian Brody's character, but they don't really respect him. And kind of the way that the money and power will use the skills of immigrants, maybe it'll give them some notoriety, but ultimately no respect. And on the other side of things, Adrian Brody's trying to survive and also find a way to kind of regain his identity and then recombine his family together. I keep saying first half of this movie because everyone I heard talk about it said, like, first half was great and second half was not as good. And I have to agree. That's exactly where I fall down too. First half of this movie, I'm saying it's like probably 4.5 to 5 stars. It's fantastic. It's engaging, really good character study, but also a really good like period study and a commentary on wealth and power and America and what it means to be America and American. the immigrant experience. All these things are really kind of foundational to kind of the American experience, especially in the 20th century. In the second half, I feel like as we see the character, Adrien Brody's character, as we see that character start to, Laszlo, I remember his name is Laszlo, as we see him start to kind of drift and to lose his identity, I feel like the movie kind of loses its identity too. I feel like I wasn't sure who I was supposed to care about, because once his wife and his niece arrive, we know the Guy Pearce is to some degree all the way through is going to be a villain of sorts. And we also know Adrien Brody is going to have kind of rises and falls, and you're not sure which way it's going to go with him. And he's going to have a character, kind of a path. So you're not surprised if he goes up or down. But once his wife and niece arrive, you're kind of thinking like, well, maybe the second half of the movie is going to, because it kind of starts with her narration, maybe the second half of the movie is going to be her story. And I think it starts to kind of go that direction. And it does kind of go that direction. I just don't think it went hard enough. It's almost like he didn't believe in it enough. I think this movie is good. I would say I'm going to say right off the gate, it's 3.5, I'd say. I'd say it should have been 5, and I know it is for a lot of people, 4.5 or 5. For me, it's 3.5 because that second half becomes, to me, quite aimless. And in a 3.5-hour movie, half of that movie being kind of aimless is a problem. It looks great. We don't talk about it looks great again. But to me, and this is me rewriting the movie, which is not fair, but whatever, I'm going to do it. To me, what really would have worked in the second half of this movie better was when she arrives, the focus just shifts and she becomes our central character for the entire rest of the movie. And then maybe the epilogue, once again, is a weird, weak part of this movie. I think it's kind of just tacked on and it's kind of expository. It's kind of like the narration in a sense. I think having the role switch and having us follow her path as a new person in America and her niece and letting him almost become a secondary character, which it starts to do a bit in the movie, but to fully commit to that, I think would have given this movie a ton of power that to me it didn't quite have in the second half, because it would have shown you two things. It would have been a split movie, but in a great way. Part one would have been famous artisan, not famous as an immigrant, finding his identity in America now, but a man. And then second part, a woman also in her own right, educated and career person that has her own identity, finding her identity in this new world, either with or without Laszlo as things progress forward. And I think if it had committed fully to that, I think I would have loved the second half much more than I ended up doing. Once again, 3.5. I still think it's worth your time, especially if you're into the movies like we are, then you're going to probably at least give this a try. It is definitely a commitment though. And this is one of those movies where you say, well, it feels like it's going to be homework to me. Like Ron was not homework to me, but it felt like it was going to be going in. Going into this felt like it was going to be homework. And by the second half, it kind of was. So be warned. If you are thinking like, this is homework and not my type of movie, it probably won't be your type of movie. But if you're presupposed, you're preset to kind of watch this kind of movie, at least give it a chance, I think you'll find a lot of good stuff here. And you'll get enough. To me, like I got 2.5 hours of a great movie in a 3.5-hour movie. So I can't be mad that I got a 2.5 hours of a great movie. You know what I mean? So once again, 3.5 stars, recommended, solid recommend, should have been a classic. But this director can definitely make a classic because what they did here is pretty darn great. Okay, that's all I've got for this week. Next week, I know we have our Patreon coming up, and as well as our regular episode. And boy, oh boy, I cannot remember what the Patreon movies are. Hopefully they've already mentioned them. I know they're 2 movies I haven't seen, so that's always good. That means I'm going to get to discover some things I haven't seen before. Anyway, thanks guys for listening. I hope you got some stuff out of this episode. Number 1, I would say if you haven't seen Ron, I'm not going to say it, I was going to do a terrible pun. If you haven't seen Ron, check it out. I think a lot of you will have a lot of value to gain from watching that movie. All right, I'm out, going back into the attic.